Sarah Miller clutched her worn leather folder as she waited in the hallway of the family courthouse. The morning light filtered through tall windows, creating patterns on the marble floor. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of what was at stake. Inside that folder were months of research, late-night study sessions, and every detail that could help her keep custody of Emma, her 7-year-old daughter. The sound of expensive shoes clicking against the floor caught her attention. A tall man in a navy blue suit walked toward her, his silver hair perfectly styled and his tie probably worth more than Sarah's entire outfit. This had to be Marcus Thompson, the lawyer representing her ex-husband. She'd heard about him from other single mothers in her support group. They called him the Shark because he never showed mercy in family court. "Ms. Miller?" His voice was smooth, like a practiced speech. "I'm Marcus Thompson, representing your ex-husband." He looked down at her with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I wonder if we might have a word before we go inside." Sarah straightened her back. She'd prepared for this moment. "Of course, Mr. Thompson." "I've reviewed your case," he began, pulling out his phone to check something. "And I must say it's quite ambitious of you to represent yourself. Most people in your situation would know when they're outmatched." He paused, letting his words sink in. "My client has authorized me to offer you a settlement, $5,000 to drop the custody case. Walk away now and you can avoid the embarrassment of losing in front of the judge." Sarah felt her stomach twist. $5,000 would pay off her credit card debt, help with Emma's school supplies, maybe even fix the leak in her apartment ceiling. But she looked at her folder and thought of the late-night study sessions, her daughter's drawings on the refrigerator, and the promise she'd made to herself. Emma would stay with her, the parent who actually knew she was allergic to strawberries, who remembered she liked her sandwiches cut diagonally, who never once forgot a parent-teacher conference. "My daughter isn't for sale, Mr. Thompson," Sarah said quietly but firmly. Thompson's eyebrows raised slightly. "I see. Well, I suppose we'll do this the hard way." He glanced at his expensive watch. "I must warn you, though, courtrooms aren't kind to people who don't understand the system. It's like trying to perform surgery without medical training. You might think you know what you're doing, but one wrong move." He made a cutting gesture with his hand. "I appreciate your concern," Sarah replied, holding her folder tighter. "But I've done my homework." "Homework?" Thompson chuckled. "Ms. Miller, I went to Harvard Law School. I've been practicing family law for 25 years. What you've done is like studying a children's book about airplanes and thinking you can fly a 747. Other people in the hallway had started to notice their conversation. A few parents waiting for their own hearings paused their conversations to listen. Sarah felt her cheeks flush, but she kept her voice steady. "Then I suppose we'll see who's really prepared when we get in there." The courtroom doors opened and a bailiff called out, "Miller versus Miller, family court is now in session." As they walked into the courtroom, Thompson leaned closer to his client, Robert Miller. Sarah couldn't help but overhear his words. "Don't worry about her little folder of notes. She's clearly in over her head. This will be over before lunch." Robert nodded, adjusting his expensive tie. He hadn't bothered to look at Sarah once since arriving at the courthouse. 6 months ago, he'd barely remembered Emma's name when speaking to his friends. Now suddenly he wanted full custody? Sarah knew something was off, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what yet. As they took their places at opposite tables, Sarah arranged her papers carefully. She'd organized everything by topic: Emma's school records, medical history, her own work schedule showing consistent employment, letters from teachers praising her involvement in Emma's education. Each page had a purpose, a story to tell about why Emma belonged with her mother. Judge Patricia Rodriguez entered the courtroom, her black robes swishing as she took her seat. She was known for her fairness, but also her no-nonsense attitude toward unprepared lawyers. Sarah had read about all her major decisions online. "This is a hearing to determine custody arrangements for Emma Miller," Judge Rodriguez announced. "Mr. Thompson, you may present your opening statement." Thompson stood up smoothly, buttoning his jacket. "Thank you, Your Honor. Today's case is quite straightforward. My client, Robert Miller, is a successful executive with a stable income and a spacious home in the suburbs. He can provide Emma with private education, extracurricular activities, and financial security that her mother simply cannot match. He gestured toward Sarah without looking at her. Ms. Miller, while no doubt loving toward her daughter, works 2 entry-level jobs, lives in a small apartment, and has chosen to represent herself in court. This alone should tell the court something about her judgment. Sarah felt her face grow hot, but she kept her eyes on the judge, not on Thompson's smug expression. She'd prepared for this. Every insult, every attempt to make her feel small. What Thompson didn't know was that Sarah had experience with men who tried to intimidate her. Her ex-husband had been just like Thompson in many ways. Ms. Miller, Judge Rodriguez said, "You may present your opening statement." Sarah stood up, her legs steady now. She thought of Emma waiting at her friend's house, probably coloring or playing with dolls, trusting that Mommy would come back soon with good news. That trust gave her strength. "Thank you, Your Honor," Sarah began. "This case isn't about who has more money or bigger houses. It's about who has been there for Emma every single day of her life, who knows her fears and dreams, who understands that she needs her nightlight on and her favorite stuffed rabbit to fall asleep." She opened her folder and pulled out a calendar marked with Emma's activities. "I have records here showing my attendance at every school event, every doctor's appointment, every play date. I have letters from her teachers, her pediatrician, and her daycare provider. They all tell the same story. Emma thrives in a loving, stable environment which I have consistently provided." Thompson leaned back in his chair, still looking amused but perhaps slightly less confident. Judge Rodriguez nodded for Sarah to continue. "I also have some questions about why Mr. Miller suddenly wants custody after showing little interest in Emma's daily life for years," Sarah added carefully. "But I'll save those details for the appropriate time during the proceedings." As Sarah sat down, she caught Thompson's eye. For just a moment, his smug smile faltered. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be the easy victory he'd expected. The courtroom fell quiet as Thompson rose to present his case. He moved to the center of the room like an actor taking the stage, his designer suit catching the light from the overhead fixtures. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who had won countless cases before. "Your Honor," Thompson began, his voice filling every corner of the room, "the facts of this case are clear. My client, Robert Miller, is a vice president at Miller Financial Services. He earns over $300,000 a year and owns a 5-bedroom house in Oakwood Heights. The property has a pool, a finished basement with a play area, and the best schools in the county are within walking distance." He picked up a stack of papers from his table and waved them in the air. "I have here documentation of my client's financial stability, his excellent credit score, and testimonials from his business associates about his character. Emma would have access to the finest education, music lessons, dance classes, and whatever else she might need." Sarah watched. Thompson paced back and forth, his movements calculated to command attention. She knew he was trying to overwhelm the court with numbers and luxury, hoping to make her own situation look pitiful in comparison. "On the other hand," Thompson continued, turning to gesture toward Sarah, "Ms. Miller works as a cashier at Morrison's grocery store during the day and cleans offices at night. Her combined annual income is approximately $32,000. She lives in a 2-bedroom rental apartment in a neighborhood that has, shall we say, seen better days." Judge Rodriguez wrote something in her notebook but didn't look up as Thompson continued his presentation. Thompson pulled out more papers, each page seeming to emphasize the financial gap between the two parents. "Emma currently attends public school. While I'm sure her teachers do their best, the student-to-teacher ratio is 28-1. In the school district where my client lives, that ratio is 15-1. The difference in educational quality is substantial." Sarah felt her chest tighten as Thompson continued to paint her life in shades of poverty and inadequacy. But she reminded herself that she had prepared for this. Every criticism he made, she had already considered and found answers for in her research. "Your Honor," Thompson said, approaching the judge's bench, "I submit these documents showing the vast differences in what each parent can provide. While love is important, And I'm sure Ms. Miller loves her daughter. Love alone cannot provide the advantages every child deserves. Judge Rodriguez accepted the papers and set them aside. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Ms. Miller, you may present your evidence. Sarah stood up, her legs steadier now. She had practiced this moment in front of her bathroom mirror 100 times. She walked to the evidence table and picked up her first document. Your Honor, while Mr. Thompson has focused on financial resources, I would like to present evidence about actual parenting involvement and stability. She held up Emma's school records. These attendance records show that Emma has missed only 2 days of school in the past year, both due to illness. I was there for both days, caring for her at home, and called the school to get her homework. Assignments. She moved to her next exhibit. Here are sign-in sheets from parent-teacher conferences. I have attended every single one since Emma started kindergarten. Mr. Miller has attended none. Thompson shifted in his chair but kept his expression neutral. Sarah continued. These are Emma's medical records. I can tell you she's allergic to strawberries, gets seasonal allergies in the spring, and had her appendix removed when she was 5. I stayed with her in the hospital for 3 days. Mr. Miller visited once for 30 minutes. Sarah walked closer to the judge. I have letters here from Emma's teachers. Mrs. Johnson, her first-grade teacher, writes about how I volunteered in the classroom every Friday morning last year. Mr. Thompson just mentioned the student-teacher ratio. I help improve it by being present when I can. She reached for another document. This is a letter from Dr. Emily Chen, Emma's pediatrician. She notes that I know Emma's complete medical history by heart and always ask informed questions about her health care. Children's health needs stability and knowledge, not just money. Judge Rodriguez looked up from her notes. Please continue, Ms. Miller. Your Honor, I want to address something important about stability, Sarah said. Yes, I work 2 jobs, but my schedule is remarkably consistent. I work at the grocery store from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. I'm home when Emma gets off the school bus at 3:30. We have dinner together every night at 6 p.m. I read to her before bed. Always the same story if she requests it. She knows exactly what to expect from me. Sarah held up a calendar marked with stickers and drawings. Emma helped make this calendar. Every important event in her life is marked here. My cleaning job is 4 evenings a week, after Emma goes to sleep, and my mother stays with her. Emma has never felt abandoned or unsure about where I am. Thompson stood up suddenly. Your Honor, while I appreciate Ms. Miller's devotion to routine, the reality is that a child needs more than just a predictable schedule. They need opportunities for growth, experiences that expand their world. I can buy her a pony, Mr. Thompson, but I can't give her the confidence that comes from knowing her parent truly sees her. Sarah responded calmly. Emma draws pictures of our apartment with windows shaped like hearts. She writes stories about grocery shopping adventures with me. She doesn't dream about mansions and pools. She dreams about the moments we share. Sarah picked up a thick folder. I have documentation here tracking Emma's emotional development. Her preschool teacher noted her strong sense of security and her ability to express emotions clearly. This doesn't come from money. It comes from consistent, present parenting. Thompson raised his hand again. Your Honor, I must object. Ms. Miller is trying to turn this into an emotional appeal. Facts are facts. My client can provide a better standard of living. Mr. Thompson, Judge Rodriguez said, this court considers many factors in custody decisions. Please allow Ms. Miller to finish presenting her evidence. Sarah nodded gratefully and turned to her final papers. Your Honor, I have proof of something troubling. These bank statements show Mr. Miller's pattern of inconsistent financial behavior. She passed the documents to the court clerk. He claims financial stability, but these show 3 overdrafts last month, unexplained cash withdrawals totaling $15,000, and payments to what appears to be gambling websites. Thompson's face reddened. Those are private financial matters that have no bearing on this case. They do if they suggest instability that could affect Emma's well-being, Sarah replied. Additionally, I've discovered that Mr. Miller recently applied for a second mortgage on his house. His financial situation may not be as solid as he claims. Judge Rodriguez studied the bank statements carefully. These are concerning, Mr. Thompson. Do you have an explanation for these irregular transactions? Thompson cleared his throat. My client's financial management isn't on trial here, Your Honor. The point remains that he earns significantly more than Ms. Miller. The point, Mr. Thompson, Sarah said quietly, is that Emma needs a parent who is honest, present, and genuinely invested in her daily life. Not someone who can't even remember she's allergic to strawberries but thinks a swimming pool makes him a good father. The courtroom fell silent. Thompson looked caught off guard by Sarah's directness. Even Judge Rodriguez paused in her note-taking to observe the exchange. Sarah gathered her papers, feeling both exhausted and energized. She had presented her case truthfully, showing Emma's life through school records, medical appointments, and everyday moments that proved a mother's love could provide everything a child truly needed. Thompson's face turned red as he stood up, again, his expensive leather briefcase hitting the table with more force than necessary. He took a deep breath, trying to regain his professional composure after Sarah's surprising revelations about his client's finances. Your Honor, Thompson said, his voice tight with controlled irritation. I find it concerning that Ms. Miller is trying to distract this court with unproven allegations about my client's personal finances. This hearing is about custody, not bank statements. Sarah remained standing, equally composed. I have to disagree, Mr. Thompson. Financial stability is one thing you yourself emphasized when you praised your client's earnings. If we're going to discuss finances, we should discuss them honestly. Judge Rodriguez tapped her pen against her notepad. Ms. Miller makes a valid point, Mr. Thompson. You introduced financial considerations as a primary argument. The court must examine both sides of that coin. Thompson ran his hand along his tie, a gesture he made when he needed to buy time to think. Sarah had clearly researched more than he'd given her credit for. The grocery store cashier wasn't as unprepared as he'd assumed. Your Honor, Sarah continued, I'd like to address something else Mr. Thompson brought up. He mentioned putting Emma in private school and providing music and dance lessons. While those sound wonderful, Emma's current teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, says Emma is thriving exactly where she is. Sarah held up a handwritten letter. This is from Emma herself. She wrote it for her second-grade class when they were asked to describe their perfect day. She wrote about making pancakes with me on Sunday mornings, visiting the library for story time, and having movie night with a blanket fort. Not once did she mention wanting a bigger house or expensive lessons. Thompson shifted uncomfortably. Children don't always know what's best for them. They can't understand the advantages proper resources can provide. Perhaps not, Sarah agreed, but they understand love, consistency, and feeling safe. I have here Emma's drawings from art class. In every picture of our family, she draws me holding her hand. In the one picture she drew of visiting her father's new place, she's standing alone on one side of the page while he talks on the phone on the other side. The courtroom was quiet as people absorbed this simple but powerful image painted by a child's honest perspective. Thompson was searching through his papers looking for something to counter Sarah's presentation. Your Honor, Thompson said, finding what he was looking for, I have here a proposal my client has prepared. It outlines a detailed plan for Emma's future education, including enrollment at Pemberton Academy, which requires a $50,000 annual tuition. The school has a 95% college acceptance rate and— Mr. Thompson, Judge Rodriguez interrupted, looking over her glasses. Has your client discussed any of these plans with Emma? Does she want to change schools? Does she know any of the children at this academy? Thompson paused. Well, Your Honor, the school year hasn't started yet, so— That wasn't my question, the judge said firmly. Has he discussed this move with his daughter? Asked about her current friends, her teachers, her activities? Sarah saw an opening. I can answer that, Your Honor. Emma has mentioned exactly 2 conversations with her father this year. Both were phone calls where he asked if she needed anything and then said he had to go. Neither conversation was longer than 3 minutes. That's a gross mischaracterization, Thompson protested. My client has been extremely busy building his career to provide for Emma's future. But what about providing for her present? Sarah asked. Emma had a ballet recital last month. I have the program here with the date marked. Mr. Miller was invited. He didn't attend. Emma asks me questions like, why doesn't Daddy want to see me dance? How do I answer that, Mr. Thompson? Judge Rodriguez was writing extensively in her notes. Thompson could see the tide turning and made one more attempt to regain control. Your Honor, let's be realistic. The harsh truth is that money talks. In today's world, the parent who can provide better material advantages has a duty to do so. Ms. Miller, despite her best efforts, simply cannot compete with what my client can offer. Sarah turned to face Thompson directly. You're right about one thing, Mr. Thompson. We can't always compete with money. But you know what? I've learned a lot these past few months while preparing for this case. I've studied enough law to know that this court doesn't award custody based on bank account balances alone. She moved to her table and picked up a thick book. This is the Family Law Resource Guide. I've highlighted every relevant case law about custody decisions. Money is a factor, yes, but emotional stability, parental involvement, and a child's established routine matter just as much, if not more. Thompson's expression showed surprise, perhaps even respect. The grocery store cashier had done more homework than he'd expected. He had underestimated her, and it was starting to cost him. Ms. Miller, Judge Rodriguez said, I'm impressed with your preparation. Please continue with your evidence. Sarah took a deep breath. I have one more piece of evidence, Your Honor. It's about why this custody case started in the first place. She held up a letter. This is a notice Mr. Miller received from his company 3 months ago. It's a warning about his work performance. His supervisor mentioned concerns about his focus and decision-making. Thompson stood quickly. Objection. My client's employment matters are confidential. They're not confidential when they affect Emma's welfare, Sarah responded. The notice specifically mentions concerns about gambling during work hours. Is this the kind of environment you want Emma exposed to, Mr. Thompson? Someone who can't even control their behavior at work? The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Thompson's client, Robert, tugged at his attorney's sleeve, clearly agitated. Thompson tried to maintain his professional demeanor, but sweat was beginning to form on his forehead. Your Honor, Thompson said, his voice strained, I request a recess to consult with my client about these allegations. Judge Rodriguez checked her watch. We'll reconvene in 20 minutes. I suggest you both use the time to prepare for our next session. As the courtroom emptied, Sarah gathered her papers with trembling hands. She had managed to shake Thompson's confidence, but she knew the battle wasn't over. The next part of the hearing would be crucial, and she needed to stay strong for Emma's sake. Thompson and his client huddled in the corner of the hallway, their whispered argument barely audible to the others waiting in the corridor. Sarah couldn't help but notice how different this conversation looked from the confident, dismissive attitude Thompson had shown earlier. She checked her phone and saw a text from her mother. Emma is coloring pictures for when Mommy comes home. She says she's making one with a big heart because hearts mean love. Sarah smiled, knowing that no amount of money could buy the pure, uncomplicated love of a child who just wanted her mother to come home. As the bailiff called them back into the courtroom, Thompson approached Sarah. For the first time, he spoke to her without condescension. You've done your research, Ms. Miller. I won't make the mistake of underestimating you again. Sarah nodded but remained focused. I'm just fighting for my daughter, Mr. Thompson. Nothing more, nothing less. Walking back into the courtroom, Sarah knew the hardest part was still ahead. But she had proven she belonged here, that she could stand up to expensive suits and Harvard degrees. Most importantly, she had reminded everyone in that room that being a good parent wasn't about the size of your house or your bank account. It was about showing up, paying attention, and putting your child's real needs first. As everyone settled back into the courtroom, Thompson's usual swagger was noticeably missing. His shoulders seemed less square, his voice slightly less commanding, as he addressed the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to call my first witness, Mr. James Peterson, my client's business partner. A middle-aged man in a gray suit took the witness stand. He looked nervous, constantly adjusting his glasses and fidgeting with his wedding ring. Mr. Peterson, Thompson began, can you tell the court about Robert Miller's character as a father? Peterson cleared his throat. Well, Robert talks about his daughter sometimes. He mentioned wanting to provide better for her. You know, make up for lost time. Thank you, Thompson said quickly, perhaps not wanting the witness to say too much. About lost time. Sarah noticed the interruption and made a mental note. I have no further questions, Thompson said, returning to his seat. Ms. Miller, would you like to cross-examine this witness? Judge Rodriguez asked. Sarah stood up, her folder in hand. Yes, Your Honor. She approached the witness stand. Mr. Peterson, you said Mr. Miller mentions his daughter sometimes. How often is sometimes? Once a month, once a week? Peterson shifted uncomfortably. Maybe once every few months. Usually when we're discussing finances or future planning. And when he mentions her, what does he say exactly? He talks about how he should be a better provider. How he wants to give her everything he didn't have growing up. Sarah nodded. Does he ever mention what Emma likes to do? Her favorite subjects in school? Her friends' names? Peterson looked down. No, I don't recall any specific details like that. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. That's all I have. Thompson called his next witness, his client's sister, Maria Miller. She seemed more confident than Peterson, sitting straight and looking directly at the judge. Ms. Miller, Thompson said, how would you describe your brother as a father? Robert loves Emma, Maria stated firmly. He just needs this chance to show it. He's been working so hard to build a stable life for her. Has he discussed his plans for Emma's future with you? Yes, he has wonderful ideas. Private school, music, lessons, maybe even studying abroad when she's older. Thank you. Thompson sat down with a satisfied expression, but Sarah noticed something in Maria's eyes that suggested she had more to say. Ms. Miller, Sarah began her cross-examination. When was the last time you saw your niece Emma? Maria hesitated. About 6 months ago, at Christmas. And before that? Her birthday party last year. So you see Emma twice a year? Well, we're busy people, Maria defended. During those visits, how much time does your brother spend interacting with Emma? Maria's confident tone wavered. He's usually working on his phone or talking business with other relatives. Does he play with her? Help with her homework? Ask about her life? He's providing for her financially. That's his priority. Sarah pressed, gently. But as an aunt who clearly cares about Emma, wouldn't you prefer to see your brother actually spending time with her instead of just writing checks? Maria looked at her brother, then back at Sarah. For a moment, honesty flickered across her face. Of course, every child wants their parent present, not just providing. Thompson jumped up. Objection. The witness is being asked to speculate. Sustained, Judge Rodriguez said, but the impact of Maria's words lingered in the courtroom. The next phase of the hearing brought unexpected developments. Sarah produced evidence that shocked even Thompson. She presented printouts from a website called Win Back What's Yours, a coaching service for fathers seeking custody primarily for financial benefits. Your Honor, Sarah explained, these emails show Mr. Miller enrolled in this program 3 months ago. The website promises to help fathers regain custody with strategies that focus on financial advantage in court. The program costs $2,500 and includes templates for exactly the type of testimony we've heard today. Thompson was on his feet. Your Honor, this is outrageous. The source of legal advice doesn't determine the validity of a custody claim, but it does show motive, Sarah countered. Look at this email response from the program instructor. Focus on financial superiority. Don't get caught up in emotional details about the child's current life. Judge Rodriguez examined the documents carefully. These are troubling, Mr. Thompson. They suggest a calculated approach rather than genuine concern for the child's best interests. Thompson's face reddened. Even if my client sought guidance, it doesn't change the facts. He can provide a better, material life for Emma. Sarah saw her moment. Your Honor, may I call a witness? Ms. Rachel Chen is Emma's current teacher and has known my daughter for 2 years. The teacher entered, a warm woman in her 40s wearing a flowered dress. She smiled reassuringly at Sarah before taking the stand. Ms. Chen, Sarah began, what can you tell us about Emma's emotional state and well-being? Emma is a happy, well-adjusted child, Ms. Chen replied. She's confident, makes friends easily, and shows no signs of stress or instability. She often talks about her mother with great affection. Has Emma mentioned her father to you? She has mentioned him twice this year. Once she asked why fathers don't come to school events, and another time she wondered if having more toys would make him visit more. The courtroom was silent as Ms. Chen's words painted a clear picture of a child who understood, with heartbreaking clarity, her father's priorities. Ms. Miller, the teacher continued without prompting, I've taught hundreds of children. Emma's emotional security comes from knowing she's loved unconditionally. Her mother provides that. Money can't replace the comfort of knowing someone truly sees you. Thompson attempted to discredit the teacher's observations. Ms. Chen, isn't it true that children from single-parent homes often lag behind their peers academically? Actually, Ms. Chen responded firmly, Emma reads at a 4th grade level. She's in our advanced math group. Her mother's involvement in her education is exceptional. Sarah helps with homework, reads to Emma nightly, and ensures she completes all assignments. Thompson realized he'd opened a door he couldn't close. Sarah had one final piece of evidence. Your Honor, I have here a letter from Dr. Wilson, a child psychologist who evaluated both parents at my request. With the court's permission, I'd like to read the relevant findings. Judge Rodriguez nodded. Please proceed. Sarah read, Robert Miller shows limited awareness of his daughter's emotional needs, daily routines, or academic progress. He repeatedly referred to Emma as the child during our session, rather than using her name. In contrast, Sarah Miller demonstrated detailed knowledge of every aspect of Emma's life, from her favorite bedtime stories to her fears about starting 3rd grade. As Sarah finished reading, she looked at Thompson. For the first time since they'd met, he looked at her with what appeared to be respect rather than condescension. He had underestimated her completely, and it had cost him his advantage in court. Judge Rodriguez collected her notes. We'll take a brief recess before closing arguments. I want both parties to carefully consider what we've heard today. As the courtroom cleared, Thompson approached Sarah. You've surprised me, Ms. Miller. You're quite the advocate. I'm just a mother, Mr. Thompson. But when you're fighting for your child, you find strength you didn't know you had. Walking out to the hallway, Sarah felt simultaneously drained and empowered. She had stood up to one of the most intimidating lawyers in the county and held her own. More importantly, she had given Emma's true best interests a voice in this courtroom. As the courtroom reassembled for closing arguments, Thompson spoke first. His voice was measured, less confident than his opening statement. Your Honor, my client may not be perfect, but he's trying to offer Emma advantages that will set her up for success. Yes, perhaps he should have been more involved before, but people change. He's ready to step up now. Thompson paused, staring down at his notes. We all want what's best for Emma. Financial security, educational opportunities, a stable home environment. These are not trivial matters. My client can provide all of these things and more. Sarah noticed Thompson avoided eye contact with her during his entire speech. When he sat down, she stood up slowly, organizing her thoughts for her final opportunity to speak. Your Honor, Sarah began, Mr. Thompson is right about wanting what's best for Emma, but I think we need to define what best truly means for a 7-year-old child. She walked toward the center of the courtroom, addressing Judge Rodriguez directly. Emma doesn't need a pool or private school right now. She needs her mother, who knows that she has nightmares about monsters under the bed and that singing her favorite song makes them go away. She needs the parent who remembers that. She cried when her hamster died and who still keeps a photo of Mr. Whiskers on our refrigerator. Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. Today, Mr. Thompson's own sister admitted that children want their parents present, not just providing. His business partner couldn't name one specific thing about Emma's life. His witness even called her the child instead of using her name during a psychological evaluation. She moved closer to the judge's bench. I work 2 jobs, Your Honor, but I've arranged my schedule around Emma. I clean offices at night while she sleeps. I take her to school every morning and I'm home when the bus drops her off. We have dinner together every night, and I know exactly what she had for lunch because I pack it myself each morning. Judge Rodriguez was listening intently, occasionally nodding as Sarah spoke. Mr. Miller earning $300,000 doesn't mean he'll spend quality time with Emma. The evidence shows quite the opposite. He hasn't attended a single parent-teacher conference. He's never taken her to a doctor's appointment. He missed her birthday last year but remembered to send a check. Sarah's voice caught slightly as she continued. Emma deserves love, consistency, and genuine interest in her life. She's not a problem to be solved with money. She's a little girl who needs her parent to know that her favorite story is, "Are you my mommy?" and that she likes strawberry milk, not chocolate. The courtroom was completely silent. Sarah took a breath and delivered her final points. Your Honor, I've learned a lot during this process. I've studied family law late into the night after working 2 jobs. I've discovered that I'm capable of challenging someone like Mr. Thompson and holding my own in this courtroom. But my greatest knowledge isn't from books, it's from being Emma's mother every single day. She looked directly at Robert Miller for the first time. I don't blame Mr. Miller for wanting to be a better father. Every child deserves that. But changing who gets custody won't change who he is. Emma needs her father to step up, not step in and take her away from the only stable home she's ever known. Sarah returned to her table, her hands barely trembling now. Thompson stood for rebuttal but seemed at a loss for words. Your Honor, I believe the evidence speaks for itself. Judge Rodriguez removed her glasses and cleaned them slowly. Thank you both. This has been an enlightening case. She paused, collecting her papers. I've seen many custody disputes in my 20 years on the bench. This one stands out for several reasons. The judge looked at Sarah. Ms. Miller, you've demonstrated remarkable dedication and competence in representing yourself. You've presented compelling evidence about your daughter's welfare and your own involvement in her life. Then she turned to Robert Miller. Mr. Miller, while I appreciate your desire to provide for Emma, the evidence suggests your understanding of her actual needs is limited. Your financial resources alone do not qualify you as the better custodial parent. The courtroom held its breath as Judge Rodriguez prepared to announce her decision. Based on all the evidence presented, I award primary custody to Sarah Miller. Emma will remain in her mother's care, where she has been thriving. However, I also order supervised visitation for Mr. Miller, with the possibility of increased time as he demonstrates genuine involvement in Emma's life. Relief washed over Sarah. She had done it. Not just won the case, but proved that determination and love could triumph over wealth and intimidation. As people began filing out of the courtroom, Thompson approached Sarah one last time. You fought hard for her, he said simply. Every day of her life, Sarah replied. Later that afternoon, Sarah walked up to her apartment complex. Through the window, she could see Emma waiting, probably coloring at the kitchen table. When Sarah opened the door, Emma jumped up and ran to her. Mommy, did you win? Do I get to stay with you? Sarah hugged her daughter tight, feeling the warmth of her small body against her chest. We both won, sweetheart. You get to stay exactly where you belong, with someone who loves you most. Emma pulled back to look at her mother's face. I knew you'd win, Mommy. You can do anything. As they celebrated with Emma's favorite cheese pizza and a movie night building a blanket fort, Sarah thought about the day's events. She had stood in that courtroom as a single mother working 2 jobs, facing down a powerful attorney who had tried to make her feel small and insignificant. But she had proven that a mother's love, combined with careful preparation and unwavering determination, could overcome any obstacle. The victory wasn't just about keeping custody of Emma. It was about showing her daughter that women could be strong, that mothers could fight for what's right, and that sometimes the most powerful arguments come not from expensive lawyers, but from hearts full of love. That night, after Emma fell asleep clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, Sarah sat at her kitchen table looking at the legal book she'd studied so carefully. Tomorrow she would return to work at the grocery store and continue cleaning offices at night, but she would do so knowing that she had faced her biggest challenge and emerged victorious. In the end, it hadn't been about winning against Thompson or even against her ex-husband. It had been about winning for Emma, for her right to grow up, with the parent who truly knew and loved her, who would always put her first no matter the circumstances. As Sarah prepared for bed, she smiled at the thought that sometimes the most unlikely heroes are the ones who simply refuse to give up. And in Emma's eyes, Sarah wasn't just a grocery store cashier or an office cleaner. She was simply Mommy, the woman who loved her most and would fight the world to protect her happiness. The moon shone through the apartment window, casting a gentle light on the small kitchen table where mother and daughter shared their simple but love-filled life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight all that mattered was that they were together, where they belonged,